Preface. We need to understand that there are infinitely many possible versions of the future and as many possibilities for change. Some future versions are quite similar while others are completely different. Whether they all exist in parallel and at the same time on different timelines is another question and topic. In this context, the so-called Mandela effect may be interesting. Typical example of this is the former James Bond movie, Moonraker. We all can remember that Dolly Joy's girlfriend was wearing braces. In reality, she never wore braces, and she also confirmed this on demand. We all remember the scene. The evil queen summons the spirit of a talking mirror, inquiring who is the fairest of them all. But it's the preceding line that puts this example of the Mandela effect towards the top. How we remember it: mirror, mirror on the wall. In reality, magic mirror on the wall. What was revealed to the seers in the past in the various epochs is exactly one of the possible versions of the future, mostly the worst-case scenario. In other words, this future version does not necessarily have to happen. That is why some predictions did not come true, because in the meantime, there have been various changes that have given rise to a different version of the future. Moreover, in most of the apparitions of Mary, the message of La Salette, France 1846, the message of Fatima, Portugal 1917, the apparitions of Garabandal, Spain 1961–1965, future events have been revealed, which should be expressly understood as warnings. One of these passages states that the purpose of the vision is not to show a film about the immutably fixed future. Their purpose is exactly the opposite, to mobilize the forces of change to the good. These revelations also indicate that the future is by no means fixed. Even in these cases, only one of the possible versions of the future is revealed, and as a warning, usually the worst-case scenario. The pre-war period and various events. Summary of prophecies by Bertha Dud 1891–1965. Military leaders will take power in Russia before World War III. The US forces will completely withdraw from Europe. Will a sudden outbreak of war end the apparent peace? A seemingly ostensible peace will end with the death of a ruler. After that, turmoil and unrest will spread and the powers will rage against each other. Hatred will rage unrestrained. Worldwide, heavy fighting will take place everywhere. The whole world will become a source of fire. Which motives will bring about the world war? Ultimately, the ancient motives will be valid for this world war. Greed for earthly, material goods, worldwide, geostrategic power, sovereignty or even world domination, plunder of natural resources, riches, oil, gold from other countries out of selfishness and greed, as well as religious fanaticism and dogmatism. What inner spiritual causes trigger a last world war? At a deeper spiritual level, it is a battle between Satan and God equals Jesus Christ, where humans are the earthly representatives and performers of the struggle. Satan wants through this third world war as many people and nature damage or destroy in order to prevent their spiritual maturation and spiritual return to God. Why will God allow the third world war? Despite apparent peace, the preparatory struggle of the world powers will continue to be tucked away. Since the divine warnings are ignored, God will let the open war break out, because humans and spirits have free will and freedom of action, and they did not make good use of the peacetime. Therefore, God will not intervene until a certain amount is exceeded. Will material precautionary measures or escape ensure survival? Hectic material provision and escape to seemingly safe places will be of no use. People should rather confidently lay their fate in the hands of God equals Jesus and ask for protection and salvation. If the struggle of the powers triggers the global conflagration equals Third World War, everything will take its course until the Third World War will be stopped by God's intervention from the cosmos. Will an intervention of God out of the cosmos end World War III? By itself, the opposing coalition armies Islam, Russia, China, USA/NATO would not end the world fire of World War III. God equals Jesus Christ will therefore intervene at the height of atrocities ABC and so on. He will end the dreadful slaughter by a glittering bright and hot celestial body coming from the cosmos extremely quickly. This will give the earth one or more violent blows, bringing with it extreme heat and poisonous gases and dark dust clouds, covering the earth in darkness for 3 days. All the forces of nature will be in turmoil through impacts, violent earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, storms, fire rolls and floods, causing huge destruction. This cosmopolitan catastrophe, which is affecting the world, will cost countless lives. No side will be able to continue the war anymore, and there will be no winner of the Third World War, but only losers. All countries will be affected to varying degrees and faced with varying levels of misery and suffering. The chaos and destruction caused by war and natural disaster will initially require the survivors to live a radically different, most primitive life. Which countries will be affected by this? Those countries whose rulers have kindled the fire will be hit hardest by the natural disaster. The natural catastrophe will be noticeable in all countries that were united by the conflagration World War III and which are based on mutual annihilation. God will prove his omnipotence over the cosmos, nature, and everything created in this event that he has brought about and purposefully directed. This will show the righteousness of God. As the world situation, especially in the proxy war in Syria, is currently developing, one of the war drivers is Turkey and its neighboring Muslim countries and Russia, as well as Israel, USA/NATO. Both blocs have been setting the course for a third world war for years. Global natural catastrophe from the cosmos. How can one recognize the approaching end time? From cosmic signs and the restless behavior of humans and animals, it becomes apparent that the global natural catastrophe brought about by the cosmos is near. Also, the end of Earth and humanity a few years later by burning the Earth's surface is announced by prophetic predictions and internal sensations. The time until then should still be used zealously for enlightenment. Should predictions about the catastrophe out of the cosmos be spread? From time immemorial, God has warned people before great catastrophes occur so they can change and prepare for their wrongful behavior. Therefore, even those who know about such prophecies should also disseminate them. Even if very few people do not want to hear/read, they should be informed about the coming for charity's sake. They should learn what can bring them protection and help during and after the intervention of God from the cosmos. What changes in the cosmos announce danger to the Earth? There will be changes in the cosmos to constellations of the stars that periodically recurred on Earth, i.e. be made noticeable by earthquakes. What abnormalities will an approaching star have? A star moving towards the Earth will always have new peculiarities in its orbit, visibility, luminosity and different visibility. Trajectory calculations will reveal it is a serious threat to the Earth. His arrival and the ensuing worldwide natural disasters will bring about a physical and spiritual turning point for Earth and humanity. Has a catastrophe from the cosmos been predicted for a long time and is the sign of the near end of humanity? An enemy out of the air that will bring about a worldwide natural catastrophe on Earth has already been predicted biblically and by Prophet Jacob and many seers. How will the year go before the disaster out of the cosmos? The year before will already have problems of all kinds including civil wars, civil unrest, acts of terrorism, Islamic jihad, war preparations for the Third World War. They should rouse people and lead them back to God and His order. But there will be no carelessness until the signs of approaching calamity become visible to all, but too late for useless precaution. Although astronomers and the elite will recognize at an early stage the danger of an extremely near-Earth pass or even a ramming of the celestial body with the Earth, but obviously the population, as usual, will not be warned to avoid panic. Thus, for most people, disaster will be unexpected and unprepared. Will humans be able to ward off or divert this intruder? This hot bright star, which strikes the Earth directly, will not be distracted or destroyed by earthly means or weapons/inventions, because this event will be purposefully brought about by God Himself, both as help to end the Third World War as well as a punitive punishment for godlessness and degeneration of humanity. Will external protection make sense and be effective? Since this intervention from the cosmos is brought about by God Himself, earthly preventive and protective measures will be useless or only effective if they are in the individual case in the divine will and plan. Instead, turning to Jesus equals God and asking for His protection and firm reliance on His love, power and mercy will be important and beneficial. Will there be safe places to escape? Escaping somewhere will be useless. A judgment given by God reaches every person to whom it is to affect everywhere. Only what God wants to preserve will be spared. a close connection with Jesus and requests for help, protection and assistance and firm trust in God will be important for survival. How should believers anticipate the announced material losses? Because almost all people strive mainly for material goods and sensual pleasures and disregard their character and mental development, the worldwide natural catastrophe with the associated massive material destruction should show people how transient the material goods and sensual pleasures are. Therefore, anyone who exempts himself from the pursuit of the material and the sensuous at an early age and often turns inwardly to Jesus equals God, lives according to his order, and asks for help and salvation, prepares himself best and safest. Then the announced time of need will be easier and better to deal with. Which last signs will warn of the imminent arrival of the celestial body? Humans and animals will be captured by an unusual restlessness and excitement just before the beginning of the natural disaster from the cosmos. Animals will flee and suddenly turn back remotely. Only for clairvoyant believers light phenomena by angels will become visible in the sky. References of believers on it will be ridiculed by unbelievers as fantasies. What protection does Jesus promise believers for the natural disaster? Those who believe the predictions and the words of God and firmly trust in Jesus' help, who are prepared for the coming and their positive sense for the mental maturity, Jesus already before or at least during these natural catastrophes for protection, help and rescue assistance, will have good chances of survival and can remain calm because even the catastrophic events for such believers will appear mitigated. How should believers behave right before and during the onset of the natural disaster out of the cosmos? The people in the vicinity are to be pointed to the deeper purpose of the coming. They should be made aware of the divine almightiness, love and mercy and help of Jesus equals God and firmly trust in it. They are to communicate intimately with Jesus, to join him in order to receive from him more power for the hours of greatest need. They are to address seriously meant, trusting and heartfelt requests for power, help, protection and salvation to Jesus. Then they will stay calm, will not be impressed by the action, they will not have to fear and worry. Everything primarily serves the spiritual development and should lead to a return to God and his order. How will unbelievers react at the time of the disaster? As soon as the approaching star reveals an inevitable catastrophe, it will cause fear of death, reckless egoism, inability to think and panic among the unprepared and unbelievers worldwide. This will happen, above all, to those who did not believe the catastrophe predictions and have no faith in divine power and help, and therefore do not ask Jesus for help. How will the catastrophe of the cosmos proceed? From many individual parts of various prophecies and visions, the following probable scenario can be deduced which affects the intervention of God will take from the cosmos. The extremely earth close between the moon and the earth passing glowing celestial body will push a surrounding dark, poisonous cloud with huge pressure waves and many differently sized pieces of debris in front of him. Where they arrive, it will suddenly become pitch black and unbearably hot at the same time. The pressure waves before and during the flyby will cause tremendous wind gusts, tornadoes and hurricanes with roar and thunder. Tornadoes and the pull after its flyby will grab everything up and pull it up which is not firmly anchored in the ground and spread it out over the surface as shattering debris. Countless glowing stones of various sizes will rain down as sparks of rain from the atmosphere of this celestial body and cause countless fires. Many huge explosions will happen. Some large, separate companions of the celestial body will strike the mainland and the sea as glowing impacts. Not only will they produce more tsunamis, they will also lead to the evaporation of huge amounts of water and the resulting downpour. The earth will tumble and roll. The Earth's axis will shift when the Earth's rotation is stopped by the passing celestial body briefly. In the context of these events, there will also be earth shifts, clefts, huge magma and volcanic eruptions on the mainland and undersea, and extremely high tsunamis. Huge amounts of water will also pour from the Earth's interior to the Earth's surface and cause massive flooding. In short, all elements unleashed from the cosmos by this event will, through their interaction, contribute to unprecedented global catastrophes. Landscapes are being redesigned in such a way that they are often unrecognizable. In sum, the approach, passing, and circling of the Earth by the celestial body will produce 3 days of darkness. As soon as the celestial body has moved away again with its dark, poisonous atmosphere, and with its suction will carry along the poison gases and many debris. The atmosphere will clear again. The sun will shine again, but the conditions on the earth will have thoroughly changed, as it has not been experienced in the history of mankind. While not all countries will be equally affected, but where that celestial body on its orbit are closest to the earth that will have the worst effects and few people can survive. Overall, however, the global consequences will surpass all the poverty and misery that humanity has ever experienced. Will this intervention of God out of the cosmos end the Third World War at its peak? The catastrophe from the cosmos will arrive when the culmination of all evils in World War III will be reached. This intervention of God from the cosmos will also destroy the Russian Muslim coalition armies assembled for the final battle for Israel in the Jehoshaphat Valley. As God's intervention to save the earth and mankind, the catastrophe from the cosmos will make a continuation of the Third World War impossible. Thus, this world war will end only because all the warring parties are incapacitated and weakened by God's intervention, and therefore no coalition will win. What extent of damage will the catastrophe of the cosmos have? Even the Third World War will cause unimaginably great damage to human life, animals, plants, buildings, infrastructure and the earth as an organism. The natural catastrophe from the cosmos will cause far greater damage, so that the total size will surpass everything. Lands and oceans will change, rivers will emerge from the shores and images will be created to make people believe in other areas. Therefore, there will be a poverty and misery never experienced by human beings. Will the whole earth be equally affected? It is true that the countries directly below the passage of the passing celestial body and those affected by land and sea impacts are the most devastated. There will be consequences that surpass all expectations. But even those countries that are not directly affected by it and the Third World War, but participated in its creation, will be affected. This unleashing of all elements brought about from the cosmos will by no means happen by chance. It will be the last major warning of God before the end of humanity, which will take place 7 years later, and which humanity will prepare itself through depth experiments. Can death bring mental spiritual benefits from this catastrophe? Anyone who perishes through this catastrophe has the chance to develop higher in the hereafter. Those who survive will have to decide in favor of or against Jesus in the last battle of faith and will be banished to the final judgment in matter with complete unbelief and complete malice. However, those who have previously died will escape this newfound destiny. Will this catastrophe be the last sign of the near end of this human age? After the natural catastrophe out of the cosmos, mankind will fear a repetition of such an event, and thus the end of earth and humanity. This feared event of human end will occur 7 years later, according to various prophecies. It will be triggered by humans through irresponsible experiments in the depths of the earth. The catastrophe from the cosmos will be the last major warning of God before the total burning of the earth's surface and humanity. This intervention of God out of the cosmos is meant to direct thoughts to God and life after death, and to move humanity to repentance. For when is the catastrophe from the cosmos, the return of Jesus, and the end of humanity predicted? From the chaos and destruction after the Third World War, and the natural catastrophe from the cosmos, the New World Order will be erected and directed by the now emerging Antichrist. It will take a total of 7 years, according to various biblical and recent prophecies. The last 3.5 years of it will bring with it a brutal worldwide fight for faith against Jesus and all Christians. Before the imminent worldwide final annihilation of all Christians, Jesus will come again and in the process remove the faithful Christians in body. On the same day, scientifically economically motivated depth experiments will produce chain reactions of explosions to worldwide magma eruptions, earth splits, volcanic eruptions, floods of underground and above-ground water resources, hurricanes and atmosphere burnings. They will destroy the entire Earth's surface to great depths in the fire. All unremoved will perish through this fire inferno and be engulfed in the open mouth of the earth/the abyss. Short insertion. There are basically 2 possible scenarios for rapture. In the scenario described above, the rapture takes place after the Third World War and immediately before the Great Final Court. In the second scenario, The rapture takes place at the beginning of the tribulation. Recent revelations from Jesus point to the second scenario. Jesus was born on 06.01-06 BC during his 3 years apprenticeship in the years 25 to 28 AD. By Lauber, he repeatedly predicted that the end of this earth period and human period after less than 2,000 years so. According to this lifetime dating by 2028 AD at the latest. If the last 7 years of humanity and habitable surface of the earth are reached by 2028 at the latest, then by 2020-21 at the latest the World War III and its end due to the catastrophe from the cosmos can be expected. Even if the period for the actual end time start, that is the divine judgment from the cosmos, through these prophecies of Jesus is calculated to 2020-21, the exact date, that is year, month or day, remain open. Nonetheless, the event will come as a surprise to almost all people. Summary. In the context of the end-time events, civil wars and minor local and a big general were World War III, with all their devastating consequences such as hardships, hunger, inflation and epidemics play an essential role. All these problems and consequences are caused by humans. Another Third World War is absolutely not an event brought about by God, but he does allow it to happen when the rulers and powerful ones decide for it. However, when that happens, those apocalyptic events will come to pass that are prophesied by his prophets. For example, in the Revelation of John, chapters 8 and 9 as human-caused war consequences. For example, destruction of 1/3 of human beings, unimaginable famines, poverty and novel deadly diseases. For this case, he also announces consequences of a major natural disaster that comes from the cosmos as enemy out of the air, star, asteroid impact. This is probably pointed to catastrophic effects by a very close to the Earth passing large celestial body according to John in mountain dimensions. Presumably, various smaller companions strike the mainland and the sea impacts. Various seers mention a 3-day enclosure of darkness of the entire Earth with a dark poison gas cloud. Even purely material thinking, not believing in divine warnings, predict for such a case that, depending on the size and impact force of a celestial body globally impacting huge earthquakes with subsequent earthquakes, globally all rivers, lakes and seas, tidal waves, worldwide floods, huge ejection of earth magma, volcanic activity, possibly the tilting of the Earth's axis and the encasement of the Earth with poison gas clouds are to be expected. Jesus predicts that the resulting earthquake would surpass anything the Earth has ever experienced in earthquakes. The same applies to the resulting tsunamis and flooding and volcanic eruptions. Alois Illmeyer 1950s. According to Alois Illmeyer 1950s, the trigger of World War III is the assassination of a high-ranking ruler, presumably in the Balkan region. The war is preceded by a fruitful year with lots of fruits and grains. Everyone calls peace, shalom. That's where it's going to happen. A new Middle East war flares up suddenly. Large naval organizations are facing each other in the Mediterranean. The situation is strained. Surprising war beginning from the east. Bombing in the sea produces floods and earthquakes. The southern part of England slips into the water. Duration of the Third World War probably not longer than 3 months. By Anton Johansson 1858-1929 we learn. Conquest of Turkey and Iran by the Russians. Conquest of the Balkans by the Russians. Great destruction in Italy by the Russians. Conquest of India by Chinese. Destruction of 1/4 of humanity by World War III. 2 civil wars in USA divide the country into 4 or 5 parts. Ernest Stieglitz 1894-1965 shared with us. It is not until the end of this relatively short war that a nuclear weapon battle will start. And finally it comes to the total nuclear war. Its devastating effects elude any description. And finally, the poison cloud, which here also kills 1/3 of humanity. Event sequence. Summary of the probable sequence of events from now until the end of this human age when people do not listen to God's warnings and are ready to change. Asteroid impact at Puerto Rico. Destruction of Miami. Rapture of the faithful. Destruction of the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem. Beginning of the Great 7-Year Tribulation. Beginning of the Third World War. Disaster from the cosmos ends the world war. 3-day darkness. Antichrist appears. Establishment of the New World Order NWO. At the end of the 7th year of tribulation, this human era ends with a man-made conflagration that destroys the entire surface of the earth. Creation of the newly cleaned earth. Jesus enters his kingdom on earth.